The first industrial revolution took place in Britain in the mid 1700s. So the United States looked to England to start their own industrial revolution. At the time, Britain had prohibited any machines to go to the United States, and it prohibited any kind of emigration of mechanics to other countries. It was really protecting its foundation on the Industrial Revolution. When we talk about Industrial Revolution in the United States, we have to mention Samuel Slater. Samuel Slater was an apprentice in Britain to a man named Richard Arkwright. He was only 21 years old when he was the apprentice, and he actually escaped to the United States, even with being prohibited by the British government. He still lands in the United States with so much knowledge. So for the United States, he's considered the father of the American Revolution. He's considered the father of the American factory system. But for British, for the English, he's Slater the Trader. Once arriving in the United States, he made his services available to a merchant by the name of Moses Brown, and he eventually promised to replicate a machine that had been created by Arkwright. And during the process of creating this machine, he actually made additions, modifications to improve the machine. So even though it was a copy of the one that he used in England, it was a better machine because he had taken out all the weaknesses and made it into a stronger machine. That theft of the blueprints from the machinery eventually paid huge profits for him, because once he started the mills with Moses Brown and eventually grew on to make his own business, he eventually set up various mills throughout the upper north, in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and his mills usually were accompanied by a company town, which is basically the owners of the mill will set up a city or a town with all the necessities where the workers lived in. So it was in close proximity to the mill, so that allowed them to go to work and then come home. There was no difficulty. There was no real commute for the workers. So even though the Americans were perfecting the British machines, the British still had an advantage. They had inexpensive shipping. Their long lasting, their historical financial institutions, banks that have been there for a long time, which allowed for low interest rates. And obviously, a larger population than the United States allowed for that cheap labor. So that allowed for the British to cut costs, which eventually still made them make more profits. So the United States tried to level the fields. And so what it does, it implements tariffs. Now, tariffs is basically a tax on items that are coming in. So when a product, let's say from Britain, in this case cloth, came in, while they are both the same price, when they come in, they're gonna be charged $1 tax. So now if a consumer wants to buy a product and it wants a British product, it has to pay more, kind of forcing the consumer to buy American because it's cheaper. So the idea is that through export and imports, the United States was trying to control the economy. And so this is eventually going to see some drawbacks, especially from southern states, because they rely a lot on imports. And so the idea is that the South was really putting pressure on the government to take off those tariffs. Another way that Americans tried to level playing field was through the continued improvement of machines and systems. And really, what they were looking for was an advantage over the British textile mills. So, a man named Francis Cabot Lowell eventually travels through Britain, and he goes and visits a lot of textile mills, and secretly he actually takes drawings of these machines. He eventually helps with he gets help from an experienced mechanic that eventually gets to build these machines and makes improvements on those machines. So one of the things that he eventually does is making British machines better. And so that is also going to give an advantage to the United States. And so eventually, with the improved machines, with plenty of capital to invest, uh, Lowell eventually sets up the first textile mill where everything for textiles is done under one roof, and it eventually sets it up and creates uh, a city known as Lowell, Massachusetts. And the system of work and of machinery is called the Waltham Lowell system. So this is going to help spur the profits for these merchants. So the way that the system worked was that the merchants actually went into the farms, into the rural areas, and they hired young women, early as 10 years old, 11 years old, to come and work in the factories. And so this way, they wouldn't pay them the same amount of money that they would pay men. And so, in a sense, they were acquiring cheap labor and creating a bigger profit. And so, these women that were living in the farms now get to move into boarding houses in cities next to the factories. And these girls eventually are ecstatic with the opportunity to make money, to be independent, and so it really provides women with a new opportunity that they wouldn't have in the rural areas. The Waltham's Lowell system was pretty straightforward. You recruit these women, you bring them to stay at the boarding houses. They work 6 days a week. They go to church on Sunday. They work 12 hours a day. In the evenings, you provide them with some kind of cultural event, some kind of education, and eventually allow them to you provide them with opportunities, right? And freedoms. They're able to make money. These women are able to help their families. They're able to save up money for themselves. So this system is an opportunity for women. Some owners, such as Slater, when he eventually became a huge factory owner, he actually would set up these towns and would hire the entire family to work in these systems, and would eventually bring about college students to teach the children how to read and write. So while the tactics are a little bit negative in terms of how the ideas were acquired, the whole system is producing positive effects. So looking at this map, you can see that the amount of spindles that are in operation throughout the United States, you can really see in the southern United States, it's a lot less, while in the north, you really get to see that there is a lot more spindles. So it's more factory based here in the north. While you do see here and some in the west and some in the middle states, really the concentration is in the upper northeast.